Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where the Commander Clash crew, me, Seth, Richard, and Krim discuss Commander-related topics and debate them in this podcast form. Hello. Today, we're going to be talking about underrated Commander cards. So, what we mean by underrated is just cards we think should be played more in Commander. And each of us have a list of cards that we consider underrated, and we're going to just talk about them. We're going to just go from person to person and discuss which cards we consider underrated, and see where we land on them. But before we do that, if you want to help out the show, so show your support, you can head over to the MTG Goldfish merch store, where you can purchase all the sweet stuff on Richard's wall, freshly stapled for your convenience, playmats, card sleeves, deck boxes, t-shirts, and much more over at the MTG Goldfish merch store. All right. Well, we don't have that much of a preamble here, so let's just get started with the list. We'll start with you, Richard. What is your first card that you consider underrated in Commander?
All right. I didn't know if I should bring it up on the podcast since Commander Clash is my body of work, but Dousing Dagger. Criminally underplayed.
Whoa.
2%. Okay? Now, if you don't know what Dousing Dagger does for some odd reason, it's a 2-mana equipment. Okay? When it ETBs, you give someone 2 plant tokens with Defender. The effect of the equipment is +2/+1, but when you hit someone with it, it flips into the Lost Veil. You tap it for 3 mana. Every non-green deck with creatures should play this. If you're playing green, there is some argument where you would just straight up play normal ramp, but you should replace mana rocks. Like, this thing is a land. It fixes mana. It can't be destroyed. So if you play like a Worn Power Stone, Thran Dynamo, a Diamond or something, those can get destroyed. Lands are very hard to kill. 4 mana for 3 additional mana is so good, right? And it has Foretell. You can like pay 2 mana here, 2 mana on another turn. It is so good. I don't know why nobody plays it. And then the power level just explodes if you play Vesuva, if you have like the mana dorks that untap lands, stuff like that. It is so insane that I will play Vesuva in my deck to copy your Lost Veils. So everyone should play this card. Like, if you have anything that can equip, if you have anything with evasion in the slightest, this should 100% be in your deck. Way more than 2%.
I gotta ask you, Richard, how many creatures do you need? You said if you have any creatures in your non-green, like, do you need to have 20, 30 creatures? Or if you got 10 creatures, you're just gonna
10
trust
creatures
that it works
is in.
out?
So if
You're
my
running-
commander is low CMC, like 3 or less, it is 100% in because the commander is the creature. If you have a bunch of like 2-drops, 1-drops, like utility ones, 10 is enough. If you're playing like mono 6-drop, then yeah, this is not useful for you. But if you have any semblance of a curve, you should play it.
Question 2. Do you think your love of this card at all has to do with our play group? Because
No.
Tomer is playing a budget deck and playing tap lands. Krim doesn't believe in creatures. So you always have someone to hit on the first turns of the game. Do you think it's at all tainted by our unique play styles?
Slightly, but not that much. Like, I would take it into a blind group. Like, most people are not playing creatures on turns 1 and 2. Right? Most people are playing their diamonds, their signets, or whatever. So if you are low to the ground, if you have any evasion, if you have a bird, doesn't matter what creatures you're playing. There's 3 other players, right? There is usually someone to hit. And if you can't, then yeah, it's bad. But, you know, sometimes your tap lands cost you the game, right? There is some downside, but the upside's like totally, like, it's a Black Lotus every turn. If you quote unquote comboed and like hit someone, right? Like, it's so strong that it's worth the downsides. Worst case, it's a bad equipment that gives +2/+1. Like, that's not the end of the world, right?
I would addendum that you probably need evasive beaters though, or else
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like you play your turn 3 commander or whatever. You like turn 2 dagger, turn 3 my 3-drop commander. At that point, by the time you want to swing on turn 4, I feel like there will probably be some blockers on the battlefield, right?
I mean, you can have removal. Like there are all ways to mitigate this, right? And maybe you can't hit. You can't hit, and it's one of those games where you don't cast a dagger, right? Like there are games where you don't, right? But those games are rare, I think. And the upsides of like a free Black Lotus every turn, like totally outweighs that.
Have you also factored in the fact that you also should probably buy, like, I don't know, a lottery ticket or something, because you have it all the time, every time on digitally.
Look, when you play it in literally every deck, okay, just the sheer quantity of games I get in, it will look like I have it every game.
We need to have a stat on that. Number of times Richard plays Dousing Dagger versus number of times he casts Dousing Dagger.
And you gotta count all the tutors every time I tutor for it. Turn one gamble.
I've definitely seen you tutor for it numerous ways. Yeah. And then on top of that, the times you've naturally had it, it's like, okay, so you have it on 2. Obviously, it's a house, right? Like, okay. Yeah. But what happens when I'm like, it's turn 432, and yeah, you're just like, okay, top deck this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what if you draw explosive vegetation? Why are you playing that card? What if you're playing Ranger's Path on turn 8? You're like, yeah, I mean, unfortunate. You can get some value still, but not the best.
I think those cards are still okay late.
Yeah.
Dousing Dagger gives you additional 2 power late.
Are you gonna argue deck thinning, Krim? Is that where we're heading with this?
Deck thinning. I do see like the simplicity of like I do see the simplicity of like this versus an Arcane Signet. Like you turn 2 Arcane Signet, you don't have any hoops you jump through, and then you just cast a 4-drop on turn 3. Whereas this one, you know, you still have to equip and then you have to attack. So it's like delayed, but the payoff is really good. Like. It's like an explosive vegetation that makes you 3 instead of 2, and then copying it and everything is like insane.
I feel like the proper rating is probably somewhere below where Richard puts it, because he absolutely loves that card, but also somewhere above 2%, which does seem like criminally low for how powerful Richard has proved that card to be over and over and over and over again.
Look, it's starting to get some recognition. It's at $4 now. A lot of the cards on our list are like sub $1. But this is at $4. There's like at least 10 of us watching Commander Clash and like copying
the Dousing Dagger. He keeps getting away with it. I have to play.
And also, I also wanted to say that, Seth, please, I do believe in creatures. Okay, come on now.
I knew that's where you're going with that.
Just not more than 5.
All right, so that's a pretty good start. Seth, moving on to you. What's a card you consider underrated in Commander?
Ooh, all right. I'm going with Trading Post. I absolutely love Trading Post. It's played in 2% of decks. It's basically free. It's been reprinted a million times. It's in so many Commander decks, but people still don't play it if you haven't seen it. It's a 4-mana artifact. You can pay 1, discard a card to gain 4 life. You can pay a life and 1 mana to make a 0/1 goat. You can pay a mana, sack a creature to get an artifact back to your hand, or pay 1, sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. So basically, this is card advantage. It's recursion for artifacts. It's incidental life gain and chump blockers all in 1 card. And it's probably, again, like maybe I'm too high on it compared to how I should be, but I feel like 2% is super low. I really like incidental life gain. That's something that I look to have in my deck, because I hate to be the person that it gets attacked early and you're really low on life, and then you're just playing the entire game waiting to die, essentially. And you're every single turn, you're like, oh, please don't attack me, please don't attack me. That gets really old. Ways to get your life total back is nice. Worst case, you can always cycle it. You can sack it to itself and draw a card, so it's hard for it to ever be bad. And 2% means even artifact decks aren't always playing it. Like, it's obviously great in artifact decks because you can get back your artifacts that get blown up, but at 2%, even decks that are dedicated to its card type are not consistently playing it. And I like it even in decks that are not fully dedicated to being an artifact deck.
I don't like it.
Do you feel that at 4 mana, you're now competing for like something that should be more powerful?
Like solemn, or like,
well, like so.
Power cost that is solemn.
I actually do think Solemn might be more powerful than this.
It definitely is.
Like legitimately it is, right? So
but this gets back your Solemn, so you can reuse it, and sacks your Solemn. There's so many synergies. It works with all the other good cards.
I think it's just it's way too slow. It's
like,
slow. It requires, you can only do one thing per turn, unless you can untap it. I don't even run in artifact decks. I'm sorry, Seth.
I think Seth has sold me. So
slow.
I play all the Voltron decks. I never play Trading Post because it's a bit slow, but I do play like Buried Ruins and like just random nonsense to recur my artifacts, and Trading Post could be a good one. And I could sack like a late game Dousing Dagger to draw a card if I can't get it to connect. So
Buried Ruins is a land, though.
Yeah, Buried Ruins is a land.
This one is a five mana commitment before you get any value, and the value is very low impact, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you should play in every deck. I'm not saying this is like some insane ultra stable that every single deck needs to play. But 2%, I mean, it does a lot. I love these value cards that do a whole bunch of different things. And it just does a little bit of everything, which I think means it should be given at least more consideration.
I think 2% is too
It's a
high.
bit high.
Is it worth it in mono white for card draw?
No, absolutely not.
I would just play
Staple.
the thing where both players draw 3 instead.
I know, but like Seth is also very high on that 3 mana artifact or mana rock that like you can pay 5 to like make a clue token and then you pay additional.
Oh god, the investigating
draw
or
a card. And I'm like, all right, this makes sense.
Wait, really?
I actually think it's not that bad. I don't know, like I think it should probably play like 4 to 6%. It's not like a staple, but it does a lot. Like that one goat chump blocker is what prevents you from taking 21 commander damage, right? The ability to sack an artifact to draw a card, maybe your artifact land or some random stuff you have around. I think it is pretty versatile. It should go in more decks, and it's cheap. So I don't know. I think it's better than a lot of people's 99th card or whatever, 100th card. So it probably should go in more decks.
Once it's on the battlefield, it's only 1 mana to activate any of those abilities. So while it is 4 to get going, it is relatively efficient once you actually get it down.
Okay.
Play more Trading Posts.
All right, moving on.
Tough crowd. We're not selling anyone today.
Well, that's part of the fun. Is like it's not a presentation; it's a debate, mostly for our podcast. But we'll find out. Maybe there's some cards that are universally loved. Krim, what do you got for us?
Oh, okay. Well,
the debate table.
So I'm gonna start with a card that is apparently 0% played.
Whoa.
and that's going to be Spreading Plague, according to EDH Shrek. And I think this card, it's $5. It's probably the most expensive card that I've got on my list, and it's 0% played. And what it does is whenever let me also get the Oracle text on this because I don't want to read you the wrong card here. But whenever a creature enters the battlefield, destroy all other creatures that share a color with it. They can't be regenerated. So this is great, right? This
You're a monster.
This completely shuts down like the table. And if you're a multicolored deck, imagine if you're a 5-color deck, you just always board wipe whenever you play a creature, and it keeps your creature alive. Of course, that also means that yours gets blown up when the next one happens, but it's a fun cycle that just keeps going around, especially if you don't believe in creatures. So, but at the same time, obviously you need creatures to blow up other creatures, but sometimes you can just play this as a 5-mana enchantment and then just let the table have fun. So I absolutely love this card, and I don't understand how it's only $5. And on top of that, how it's criminally underused. If you're in a black deck, this is hilariously awesome. So, I mean, it's Sweep City all the time. They can't even be regenerated.
I will say, if we just did the stats episode of the podcast, and I don't know if that's going to be live when this goes up or not, but regardless, Krim doesn't play creatures. I think he played more planeswalkers than creatures this season. So if you're Krim and you don't believe in creatures, this card actually seems kind of insane because there's not much of a drawback and your opponents are just like blowing up all their own stuff. I will say probably part of the reason that it's cheap and not heavily played is if it was heavily played, I would expect it to show up on some of the salty lists, just like repeatedly wrathing the board every single turn. This would probably be in the top like 10 salty cards or 50 salty cards or whatever. So maybe that's part of the reason that more people don't play it. Not because it's not good, but because their friends get too upset with them.
I think this card is also just kind of under the radar.
It's a salty card. It definitely makes people want to kill you, right? Like that's
but they
like
can't.
one.
Yeah.
Remember the time Krim played this on us? It was like nigh impossible to do anything.
No ban list. He was Esper deck versus 3 green heavy creature heavy decks, and he was playing Esper.
Field of the Dead,
Friends.
more like Field of the Irrelevant, right? Come on, who cares?
It was incredibly effective. I'll give you that. Like it was very good, but I feel like a lot of decks just can't run it because like they're focused on creature strategies. I think it is kind of interesting.
I play this in my creature deck too.
My
like 3+ color decks, because then I'm always blowing stuff up no matter what.
Just only play indestructible
your
creatures.
stuff?
Yeah, but I don't care about
your
my
stuff
stuff.
getting blown up. Okay.
I don't care about my stuff because usually the deck.
Maybe he's playing a Panharmonicon deck, where the creature body doesn't matter, but the trigger does.
Yeah, it's really good. Like Ewits and such.
I'll give it to you. I think control decks need to be playing more of this, but I don't know how many control decks there are out there, and I don't know that I want to see more of this. It's like everyone should play Tabernacle if it was free, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to see that in Commander, right?
Tabernacle is like $3,000.
What I'm saying is that they reprinted it, but I don't know if that's the Commander I want to be playing. If everyone's packing Spreading Plagues.
This card is just good. It's
Everybody
fun.
stop
It's
having
hilarious.
fun for a while.
I thought this card is hilarious.
I might accept good, but I don't know about fun.
Is it powerful?
I was not expecting the fun
powerful?
argument.
Yes.
Yeah, it is good.
Okay,
it's strong.
It's definitely like I feel like it's under like not on most people's radars, and they don't even know that it exists.
Yeah, I think most people don't know it exists.
Maybe people know it exists, but they have a moral compass. And
I feel like we're doing a disservice.
I don't believe that for how many like stacks decks there are and all that. I don't believe that.
That's true. Hull Breacher was very high before it banned.
I sort of feel like we're doing a disservice to the format as a whole by talking about this card.
Yeah.
Because more people
please
might
do
learn
not
about
play
it and
this
start
card.
playing
For
it.
moral reasons, we need to shelve this podcast.
This card
It's
is
never
bad.
happened.
This card is
the
bad. It's
card.
overrated even. Please
If you
do not
hear
play
the
it.
table, the card is good. Everybody knows it's good, but it's also just not on your radar. So
Ugh, I don't
Control
feel good
decks
about
need
this
it.
podcast already.
control decks need it.
All right. Well, that was. I'm scared.
Spreading
no.
plague. Play more of
Yeah.
it. Spread it.
All right. All right. We'll move on. My first pick here is a card that I jam in most of my red decks these days. It is Bolt Bend. It's a 4-mana instant, but it costs 3 less to cast if a creature with power, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater on the battlefield, and you change the target of target's spell or ability with a single target. I really like this card in basically any deck that has bigger creatures, including like a commander that has like 4 or more power. I think it's just like a great protection spell, and it can also mess up your opponents if they try to go off as well. It has like some weird flexibility to it. I like it as a way, like, let's say somebody's trying to like Swords to Plowshares your creature. You can 2-for-1 them essentially by redirecting the Swords to Plowshares to a threatening creature that you do not control. And you can also counter a counter spell, for example, too. If somebody tries to like Mana Drain a spell on the stack, you can Bolt Bend and redirect the Mana Drain to target the Bolt Bend instead. And just like sometimes there's just like powerful activated abilities that are targeting something, and you change the direction of that too. So it's essentially usually going to be one red mana to cast it, and I think it's just like very versatile. It kind of got overshadowed by Deflecting Swat when that came out, which essentially does the same thing for 3 mana, but it costs 0 if you have a commander out. But I don't know, it's at 2%. 2% right now on EDH Rec. It's 25 cents. I think it's a good card. I feel like it should be played more.
I think my question is the effect good? Like, I will grant that outside of deflecting swap, this is probably the best version of the redirection effect. I've just found that personally, I never play redirection effects. Maybe it's just the decks I play, but is that style of card even something I want to make room for in my deck, even if this is the best version of it? And I'm not exactly sure. Richard and Krim, do you play like redirection effects usually?
Even if probably not. It's always my I feel like the 100th card or 101st card, and I'm just like I'm not talking about it in just like my even in my creature heavy decks and all that stuff too. So I don't play them, and I always want to
with like 7 creatures instead of 5.
Well, yeah, then I'm getting flooded if I go past 8.
Krim will never play this card. He doesn't have a control valve. Why are you asking you?
I think the only deck that would want this is some kind of equipment deck, some kind of Voltron deck or something, and then it's passable. But even then, it still just feels like there's so many better things. Because deflecting SWAT itself, I don't play, right?
Yeah,
and I will. Yeah,
I don't even play
deflecting
SWAT
either.
I don't like this effect. I sometimes I put it in my deck, but it's always the first card to get cut because it's so situational, right? You need to wait for something to redirect. You got to hold it the whole game. And then if you protected your thing, you're probably happy. You don't really need the 2-for-1 anymore. And usually I replace this with a more versatile spell like Swan Song or I don't know, Blossoming Defense, or one of the cards that do what I want but have more utility than just randomly redirecting.
What about a Blue Sun Zenith and you redirect it to your face instead of the opponent's face? Ooh la la.
I mean, that
Seth's
could happen.
gonna play it all the time now.
You've convinced me. You've convinced me, Tomer.
But there are games where people start hitting you with creatures and you're like, all I got is a Bolt Bend in my hand. Or they you have a creature you want to protect and then they just rat the board. You're like, unfortunate. And then
I mean, that's true. It's narrow, but I feel like the payoff is definitely worth it. It's not quite a counter spell because I can't stop a wrath, but I don't know. Every single time I put it in a deck, I've been very happy with it. The last time I played it was Seth was stealing a game-winning combo piece of Throne of Scepters or whatever like that. It was an ability. It was an activated ability. And I was able to redirect it to prevent that, but unfortunately, Seth also had a removal spell. If I had another bolt, then
if you had deflecting SWAT,
I could have directed that one as well, and I would have been maybe able to combo. No, well, Richard also had a counter spell. If I had 3 bolt bands in my hand, boom! What do you do now?
But then there's those games where you don't have anything, but you have 3 bolt bends.
True, it's situational, but I think the payoff is worth it.
And I do like that it's a counter spell in Counter Wars. If you're a non-blue deck, that seems relevant with Krim in our playgroup, for example, being able to redirect a counter spell to something else on the stack and resolve your spell. That is nice. I think if you're in blue, it gets less valuable because you can just play a real counter spell. But if you're mono red and really need to win against the control player, then I think maybe it's underrated in that sense.
What about Fork versus Bolt Bend? Would you play a Fork effect or would you play a Bolt Bend, or would you think of them as different cards?
I would play a
Bolt Bend is
Fork
1 red.
effect.
Really? I think double red's out of the question for me usually. I won't run double red. 1 red or free like SWAT are good.
I would probably lean towards Fork, but honestly, I don't play either of those effects.
But
Fork
Fork
is the one
less
I would
dead,
play.
right? They ramp,
Yeah.
you fork it. They counterspell, you fork it back. It's almost Bolt Bend, not exactly. It's one of those conditional ones where you gain value, but it's less conditional. Or say Dual Caster, any of these Fork type effects, which I also rarely run, but I think I would run those before I run a deflecting SWAT.
I like that Bolt Bend hits abilities. I think that is an upside compared to Fork. I don't know how relevant that is, but that is something that I could imagine, coming up in some situations. So
My thing with Bolt Bend that I think I like the most is definitely mentioned earlier by Tomer, which is that it's going to be able to redirect a counterspell. Because it's just how they use, Ricochet Trap in Standard or whatever. So stuff like that. And it was very annoying when my counterspells got redirected.
I like that it's expensive for cascade purposes.
Ah.
You can cast it for 1 mana, but it's technically 4 mana. So yeah.
Okay.
So definitely underrated.
All right.
I agree.
All right. So we're good on the first round. We're going to go to round 2 of the underrated card recommendations. Back to you, Richard. What do you consider underrated here?
If you guys didn't buy Dousing Dagger, I'm not sure how well I'll sell this one. But Coveted Jewel.
We're a tough crowd.
Coveted Jewel, I've been playing like since it was printed. I've like cast it like 3 times. I'm convinced this is a good card. It's a 6 mana artifact. When it ETBs, you draw 3 cards. You tap it to add 3 mana of any one color. And when 1 or more creatures an opponent controls attacks you and isn't blocked, that player draws 3 cards, gets the Coveted Jewel, and untaps it. So it's card draw and ramp, right? And if you actually have a big board presence, it stays with you. If you don't have a big board presence, it's a monarchy situation where people will just steal it and it becomes like a mini wheel as it like passes around the table. I think if you're mono white, you always play this. I think it's like really strong. It's like 3 mana draw 3, right? Because it can immediately tap for 3, so it's a refund. And if you can hold on to it, it's still
I don't
good.
think it's 6. You can't play it on turn 3.
I'm just saying. Like it's like Dark Petition or something, right? Like on the later turns, it refunds you some mana. It like if you're in white and you desperately need card draw, this is it. Right? I think it's actually really good. It's like basically free. It's only in 1% of decks. I think a lot of people should be playing this, especially if you're a creature heavy deck. Like if you're some kind of tribal deck or anything and you actually have blockers, this becomes even better. If not, it's just a weird group hug wheel type card that goes around the table.
I do like it in go wide decks. I actually play it like in a few of like I played it in my humans deck, but
Crim.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
we agree on something.
I think this card is sweet. I think it's so much fun. The one minor downside when you play it is you just paint this huge target on yourself. Like hit
only
me,
once
please.
because they
like
hit you
true,
and then
true.
you're free, right? Tomer should play this to deflect the aggro, right? Like
Yeah,
we'll just
yeah.
go where the jewel is, right?
Until I get hit for like 21 commander damage on the
Well,
first
you just
hit.
need to not get one shot, right?
Nah.
And then it'll go on to the next person.
Yeah. But I do think this card is a lot of fun, and it is it's cheap, and I do think it's also kind of like it is underplayed in my opinion, but I can understand the arguments for why people don't like it because it's often cut for the fact that although it is 3 mana back later, it is still 6 mana. Right, like up front, and like when you're paying 6 mana, you gotta do something, right? As soon as it hits the board.
Draw 3 cards.
Okay.
I actually like it. I actually go wide and creature heavy decks is not actually my favorite spot for this card. I actually like it even more in red artifact decks because red artifact decks, like their staple classic payoffs are stuff like Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer, Daretti Scrap Savant, where you can basically sacrifice. Yeah, you could sacrifice an artifact to get an artifact out of your graveyard. You just like swap the two. So Jewel Lotus, for example, like you could like make a clue token, Faithless Looting or something, discard it into your graveyard, cheat it into play. You know, now for the cost of like 1 or 0 mana, you draw 3 cards, have a 3 mana rock, and then if somebody tries or is going to attack you or whatever, you just sacrifice it, or you just sacrifice it preemptively too, so they won't attack you, which I think is awesome.
I think Richard be tripping on this one. There's no way this card is underrated.
Come on, you're my Boros brother.
I like this card.
Where are you
I
gonna
think
draw
it's
cards
fun.
in Boros?
This is a card that I hope everyone else thinks is underrated and adds it to all their decks because it's at its best when you're not the one playing it. You don't want to be the one spending 6 mana on this. You want to be the one that hits your opponent with one of your Boros creatures and steals it and gets just as much value out of it as the person that took their entire turn spending 6 mana. Like
They do essentially cast it for 0, yeah.
yeah, like you get to cast it for free
the
by
card.
attacking someone. Like, why would I want to be the one investing 6 mana. So I can buy the argument that like if you're really hard up for card draw, I know a lot about drawing cards very inefficiently and doing anything to draw a card.
I mean, you love trading.
In something like mono white, I would consider it, but I don't think this is a card you should be playing.
Seth, you have Dreamstone Hedron on your list, okay? You have Dreamstone Hedron on your list. You're gonna
You can't steal it.
Shortly.
You can't steal
Maybe
it.
I've been harping on Cephalon because I'm looking at the Hedron cards there.
I didn't even see Dreamstone Hedron on your list, and now I'm like, what?
That's ahead though. That's ahead. We're not gonna spoil the feature of the video.
I cannot take Seth seriously if he puts that on, but says Coveted Jewel. Like, you know, it's the same as if you sacked it and drew cards. You've lost control of it.
Is it time to talk about the Hedrons then?
It is.
All right. Seth,
Next on my list, we have a pair of cards. We all know Mind Stone is a staple. It is one of the best cards in Magic. In Commander, it's one of the best mana rocks. So what's better than a Mind Stone? Well, Hedron Archive. It's literally just 2 Mind Stones. Dreamstone Hedron, 3 Mind Stones, all in one card. You could play 3 individual Mind Stones or 1 Dreamstone Hedron. These cards, they're super cheap, under $1 each. One sees 6% of decks play in 6% of decks, others in 2% of decks. That is way, way, way too low. These are ramp spells that also draw you cards. Why wouldn't you? Why are you playing your Worn Power Stones and all these horrible effects? Coveted Jewels that let your opponent draw cards. Play mana rocks that are almost as good and also draw you cards when you need them. Like, I don't get it. I don't know why people don't play these cards way more often.
I just have one question, Seth.
Yes.
Are you memeing me right now?
No. Well, I mean,
is this some cruel punishment for me?
All right, I have a second question. Is Seth a horrible person, Tomer?
Apparently, my video would confirm, yes. Wait, okay, so when I made that video and I put that argument, people were like, nobody actually makes that argument. You're just straw manning here. And I'm like, all right, okay, we'll talk. We'll talk, Seth. Why? All I want to know is why.
Because it's good. People play Worn Power Stone. It's 3 mana. It comes into play tapped, and it adds 2 mana. Hedron Archive is a single mana more. It comes into play untapped, so it kind of only costs 2 mana. And if you really think about it, just like Coveted Jewel, Dreamstone Hedron kind of only costs 3 mana. And you have the upside of being able to cash them in for cards later in the game when you need to. You know what the downside of playing mana rocks is? In the late game, when you got all the mana in the world, but you don't have any cards in hand, they're really bad because you can already cast all your stuff. You know what you want on the battlefield? These mana rocks that you can turn into real cards that can win you the game.
I don't even like Worn Power Stone that much. Like, I'll put it in some decks if I have to, but it's not like oh boy, I'm excited for Worn Power Stone. Mind Stone is legit because it's a 2-drop. It's a 2 mana artifact. The rate is pretty decent, and it has that little upside. Dreamstone Hedron though, so when you're comparing that, Thrain Dynamo taps for 3. It comes into play untapped. It's 4
how many
mana,
cards does it? How many cards does it draw?
It makes 1 more mana. That's enormous. That's huge.
I'll give it to you on Hedron Archive. I think that card's like pretty decent. I will not give you it on Dreamstone Hedron. That one is like, okay, all right, you had me in the first half there.
It's like every iterative after Mind Stone just gets worse and worse.
I agree with Krim here. So when I was building Budget Tolerant, okay, I tried to put mana rocks in, and Hedron Archive was in my deck, and out of respect for Tomer, I spent a good 30 minutes to an hour figuring out how to get this out of my deck. I even messaged Tomer, consulted with him. I'm like, look, Worn Power Stone, Thran Dynamo, out of the budget. What can I put in here? And I couldn't come up with a good answer, so I'm like, Hedron Archive it is. But I was at like 105 cards, so I'm like, I'll just cut it out of respect for Tomer. Right? I'll just cut it.
Did you put in a retraced image into your deck? Richard.
I don't know what that card is. You didn't tell me that card when I asked you.
It's the Mono Blue Explorer. It's a sorcery too, so you make a Drake out of it. It's so good.
I'm just saying, outside of green, there's not a lot of options if you take budget into consideration. Hedron Archive is acceptable. I'm with Krim. Dreamstone Hedron's too much, right? Like, most of the time, you play your mana rock, it gets swept away in a Vandal Blast or something. You don't have the opportunity to crack because it's so expensive. you're not going to hold up essentially what is essentially 6 mana, right? Like the rock itself plus 3 additional mana on the off chance of cracking it. Mind Stone is just 2 mana, right? 1 to crack and 1 for the Mind Stone.
Right.
But most of the time they just get swept away, so it doesn't matter. But at 4 mana, like 4 mana ramp is actually acceptable. So Hedron Archive is good, I think. The other one, just play Coveted Jewel.
Yeah. You get to draw the cards right away.
And you get 3 colored mana, which is very important.
Yeah.
Getting a refund on
Rest
3
of the table.
colorless mana might mean you can't cast anything, right?
I just
But
rather
then your
run a
opponents
land.
draw cards. Rather run a land.
I'd
You
run
really
like
hate
a
it that
cycling
much.
land. Yeah.
You know what the old play pattern could have been? You have Coveted Jewel, and then when people try to steal it, you
I
flash
knew
in
Krim
Hull
was
Breacher.
going here.
But no, that pattern is no longer possible.
Oh god, that's why Krim was high on it. Oh man. Ugh.
So we won you over, Tomer. Are you
No.
gonna start adding? No. Okay.
I've run Hedron Archive and Dreamstone, both of those cards actually, in my Kozilek deck. That's it. That's the only time. Otherwise, I guess if I did have like another hypothetical like 9 mana commander, I'd run it or something like that. But
I need to see your $25 mono white budget deck. Like how do you fill this ramp here? What do you put in here?
I have both SRAM and Teshar. I did a $25 thing. You can find it on the website.
Those are low CMC decks. What if you need higher CMC?
Yeah, what if you're
play
playing
mono
budget
white with
Chroma
high
or something?
CMC,
Yeah.
like- Why are you making it more difficult for yourself?
Just play
What do you
Hedron
even play?
Archive.
Just play
Solves
Hedron
solves all the
Archive.
problems.
I refuse.
And Dreamstone Hedron.
I refuse. I refuse. All right, moving on from my sanity. Krim, what do you got for us next?
So a card that I think is also very much so underplayed is this is a tough one. Okay, I guess I'll just choose one of these. So there's a card that I really like in low to the ground decks. It's Night Dealings. I think Night Dealings is currently played a total of negative. Let me see. It's not actually negative. It's not negative, but
Less than 1%. That's what
it
zero
is.
means
It is.
on EDH,
Yeah,
right?
it's less than 1%. And what it does is whenever a creature you control deals damage to another player, put that many theft counters on Night Dealings. Then you can pay 2 and 2 black. Remove X theft counters from Night Dealings. Search your library for a non-land card with converted mana costs X. Reveal it and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. It's a 4 mana enchantment. I think this is really good when I'm playing a go wide deck or any kind of like sort of aggro deck because most of my stuff's going to be low to the ground anyways and cheap costing. So I only need like 1 to 2 counters to just really get whatever I need. I play this in my rogues deck, because I have tons of evasion. I play this in my fairies deck and just all that stuff. So I love this card for that because I can just tutor whenever I want.
Wait, don't you have to pay 4 mana to cast this? And then damage your
It's-
opponent?
it's
and
8
then
mana
pay 4 mana
plus
to do.
you need
Why?
enough damage for the counters.
It's so flavorful. I love it, but like, would you run this over a Diabolic Tutor? Which Diabolic Tutor just says 4 mana, sorcery, tutor up any card.
I would because I can do it multiple times. Legitimately, I know that it puts me on the board to getting it blown up, but I like the ability to just tutor as many times as I want, barring that I pay 4 mana each time. But I do like that in a small low to the ground creature deck, so I don't need to have like 15 counters or 8 counters on it. I only need like 1 to 3 counters. And at that point, I can just get every creature out of my deck.
Wait, if you deal 5 damage, you get 5 theft counters, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Or
correct.
like from a
Yes.
single creature?
Right.
Okay,
But if I
can
just
see this.
I play like a simple Slither Blade, I hit you. I now have a counter. I can go grab another like Merfolk Wind Robber, right? So
For
I don't-
8 mana, 4 and then 4 to get a 1-drop.
But like the thing here is I'm okay with that because the thing here is the card just does this and it scales up, right? I get to keep doing this over and over. Then I get bigger creatures, and
But you didn't
in
like
the late
Trading
game.
Post.
Yeah, but this
Yeah,
is like
this is
cooler than
Trading
Trading
Post.
Post. This is cooler than Trading Post, okay?
I
Because
agree.
it tutors.
Cool.
It tutors. That's different than me making a goat or drawing in like blind draw, whatever. I'm getting what I want out of this.
That's
So
true.
if you have a Sword of Feast and Famine, this is Pog. If you have a Cabal Coffers going, this is crazy.
Or you have a bunch of excess mana from your coveted jewel.
Or even
we don't have that
Pog
much
Champ.
extra mana. But I'm like, do I play this or do I play Reconnaissance Mission? Right?
I
like
play
one
both.
of those cards, right?
I
Like a
actually
coastal
play both.
piracy type effect. Or do I play,
don't
like
play
Tomer
that.
said, a straight up tutor, right? Like I'm just gonna tutor what I need.
I would run Reconnaissance Mission, like Coastal Piracy, like instead of just like whenever you deal damage, you draw a card with a creature. I think that's better because it's just more cost efficient.
Like what if what was the
mana that
X
you need
spell
to pay.
tutor? The like 5X or whatever, you tutor up X
Diabolic
cards.
Like
Revelation?
intention.
Yeah, should we just play that?
Terrible card.
I mean, I've played Ring of Three Wishes before, which is 5 mana to cast and 5 to tutor, but that's because
Non-black.
I really need to tutor, and I'm in a color like white or colorless that just is really bad, and I desperately need to find a specific card. The problem I have with this card, I think, is that it's in black, and black has so many good tutors. It might still be underrated at literal 0% because it is a flavorful card, and I can see what Krim's saying. Like there are decks where it could be good if you get a bunch of evasive creatures. I could see an argument for it, but it's just so tough when you have demonic tutor and vampiric tutor and diabolic tutor. There's so many just cheaper and more efficient ways to get a card that you need that you don't have to spend so much mana and jump through so many hoops.
Oh, it's instant speed too. You can instant speed tutor, which is very good. You can't get a land though, so you can't get coffers. You can't get coffers with it.
I see your 3 mana open. I pass.
Yeah, I like honestly, like if I'm running a rogue deck, if I'm running like a ninja deck, if I'm running a
Fairies.
shadow deck,
Fairies. Don't forget
fairies, yeah, like I don't think it's like the best card, but it's definitely flavorful. It costs a lot of mana, but I'm still gonna run it because I do have a soft spot for this card as well. I don't know how good it is, but
Instant
it's
speed
cool.
and constantly able to tutor over a
Sure.
one-off.
It's a
I
lot of
like
mana.
it.
Though.
Instant
It
speed
is.
into your hand is very powerful, right? You can just pass the turn, and no one can do anything to you because you can just tutor up the right answer. And
But
then
like
if
if
no
you
one
don't
does
have
anything,
creatures to attack with, then like this card is.
well, I mean,
worse
obviously
than
you
that.
need creatures to attack with, right? But you just
Yeah,
need
but
like.
then
If you hit someone for 3, that's enough, right? Like a 3 CMC card to tutor up is like good enough, right?
You
Like
pay 4 for it.
Is it?
Ugh.
You pay 4 to get it, and then 3 more to cast it after paying 4 for the
Yeah, it's
enchantment.
8 mana for the first card you tutor.
all right,
plus you
Mr.
have to hit
Trading Post,
something.
you paid 4 mana for a tutor.
Yeah, this is why I
But then
don't-
my goat is 1, and I have a Dreamstone Heater on the battlefield, so I never have to worry about
want
things
it
like
to-
that.
The first card you tutor for is 8 mana, plus you have to actually hit, and you can't get lands, and it is based on the amount of damage. Second, you tutor 2 cards, you have to deal even more damage, and you have to pay 12 mana. Those are not good numbers for me, honestly. But
when you need a mana sink,
I think
this is way better than
sink.
trading posts.
Would you kill Krim first if he slapped us down and had like
No.
say 4 power rogues?
See,
on the battlefield?
and it's
No.
subtle.
I'd be
Then
more
it's perfect
incentivized
then,
to
right?
kill
It
his
allows
rogues.
you to upfront load up your mana without being a threat so that later on you can just go and win the game without, needing 30 mana and you're not dying instantly because you played a combo piece.
It's so low on the power scale, but like still just high enough to where I would like it and like to play it, but it's low enough to where you don't draw aggro for playing it.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, it's this.
That's true.
So
I'm
there
sold.
is.
I will try this card. I'm sold. Sold enough. It should be more than 0, I think. Literal 0 seems a bit low.
Yeah, it's only in
I'll agree with that.
390 like some decks according to the EDH rec.
Like,
What
it
set
should
is
probably
this
be
from?
like 1.
Alkanagawa.
It's Kamigawa. Okay.
Yeah, Kamigawa.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll match you on tutors then, Krim. We talked about night dealings. Now here's a more recent tutor that I think should see a lot more play, and it's going to see a lot more play. This is Search for Glory. This is a 3 mana sorcery from Kaldheim. Snow sorcery. 2 and a white. Search your library for a snow permanent card, a legendary card, or a saga card. Reveal it, put it onto your hand, then shuffle your library. You gain 1 life for each snow mana spent to cast a spell. It's currently 2% on EDH Rec and 40 cents to purchase because Kaldheim's pretty recent and whatnot. I think in Commander, this is one of the first cards you should be considering in your white decks, and it's also very splashable too. The fact that you can gain some life with it, I think, is very much like it's like a bonus. Like I don't even consider that like a real thing. But like 3 mana, find any legendary card, any snow permanent card, or any saga card. Usually it's going to be a legendary card, but like Commander is a format of legendaries. If your deck doesn't have a lot of legendaries in it, then I wouldn't run it. But like your deck is going to have at least like 5 tutor targets or whatever, and this is good. I consider it like a white Grim tutor, essentially, that doesn't lose you life. It could even gain you some life. I think this card is kind of bananas. It's a really good rate.
What are some generic things I could tutor up? And don't say Cauldron.
What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, if you have like any snow planes or anything, you can get that.
I'm not paying 3 mana to tutor snow planes into my hand.
You can get like let's say you're in equipment, you get like SRAM or whatever. You want to get Teshar if you want some recursion.
Hammer of Nazan, is that legendary?
Sort of the Animist is also an equipment that you could tutor up. It's a legendary stuff.
It's gotta be non-equipment though, right? Like I really like the
Why?
fact that it's a tutor in white, because I have so many white equipment tutors that I don't really need this.
Like Urza's Ruinous Blast, you could even get like legendary sorceries.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That part's pretty cool. I do like that.
I feel like it's probably underrated, but I think like Grim Tutor is not the best comparison because it is pretty narrow what it tutors for. It's like you can get a land or you can get, there's not really sagas that see much play for the most part. So it's basically land or legend. And are there really enough good legends to make that exciting?
I think so. I think like most of my decks have enough legendaries that it's worth to grab.
But it needs to be good enough for you to spend 3 mana to grab it, right? You don't just want a random card, right? You want like a defining card, right? Like,
well, you want like, let's say you're in Selesnya and you need artifact or enchantment removal or creature removal, for example. Like you'll tutor up Kokla, and then boom, you have Kokla and you go smash.
But you're in green already. You can just use any of the green creature tutors.
I feel like it's great if you're a legendary theme deck.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing something that's themed like a Sisay style deck or Kethis that's themed around legends, this card is amazing. Just like, would you just run it in like a generic white deck though? Would you just like run it and trust that like I'm probably gonna have enough things to make it worth it?
I mean, I'd cut it if I didn't, but like I would always heavily consider it if I'm in white. Like.
Is Amaria's legendary?
No.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, like, forget that. Field of the Dead. That's not legendary either. No. Okay.
Should be. But Nykthos. You can get a Nykthos.
You get a Nykthos.
That's legendary.
You can get Nykthos. You can get like Dark Depths if you want to set up the Dark Depths combo.
Dark Depths, Urborg.
You can get like, if you want, like, if you're in a Boros deck, you get like a Aurelia or something. You do extra combats.
Shadow Sphere's good. Like
Shadow
that's
Sphere. Yep.
There's situations where that's a card I would really want to tutor up.
I like it in like an
Cauldron
deck.
pieces.
Cauldron complete. How about that one? That one's cool.
You can get that one
because you don't have to spend 50 mana to get mediocre.
Immortal Sun. I like Immortal Sun a lot. In white
that's
decks.
a very good grab. Yeah.
I think there's enough cards. I think people should consider this card a lot more. If you look at your deck and you're like, there's some key legendary pieces in it, then slam this into your deck.
As much as I love the cards mentioned, I actually don't like one-off tutors. There's a reason why that's like I think that might be in deck building for me, and that's more that I try not to play just things that are just one-offs. Even though they're like, I think like Demonic Tutor is very good. Well, no, like I mean, like there's ways to like the spell itself, it feels like a filler card, right? Like a cantrip. Except for this one, cantrip can grab any one card, right? But I want to be able to grab any one card multiple times. That's why I like Night Dealing. I like even the X Diabolic Tutor spell or the Increasing Ambition, whatever the one that has a tutor for 5 and then flash it back. I like something that I can use more than once. So in some way, or that's why Night Dealings is cool to me and all of those cards. So
because you like control, so you like long games where you grind your opponents to dust.
Right.
But you can use this to tutor for a like Decree of Pain. Well, you can't not this one, but a normal tutor where you can do the thing and get the cards, right?
Yeah, or like let's just say in this case, I need a Urza's Ruinous Blast, right, or something like that. Sure. Like I do think this card is definitely underrated, but I think that that might just be more of just me and how I like deck building, and that's why I don't play that many. If you look at my list, I don't play like Demonic Tutor. I don't play Vampiric Tutor. I play like every now and then I play like one, but maybe because it's my demon deck. So
the sauciest take I've ever heard. Who doesn't play tutors in Commander?
I mean, we talked about it in the last or one of the episodes with like tutors. Like I don't really like if I'm gonna tutor, I want to have my value like in that I want to be able to use it again and again, and or have it if it gets countered or something like that or swatted in some way. I want to be able to have access to it again.
Like a tutor on a stick or something. Reanimate.
Like what's the rogue from Kaldheim? The one that when it attacks, you can tutor. Target player tutors. I think that's really fun.
The demon.
Yeah,
the demon.
Varagoth or something.
Yeah. I think that card's sweet. So like if I'm gonna tutor, I want to be able to do it more than once.
I will say if you're gonna play Search for Glory, you should probably play another underrated card, which is Elspeth Conquers Death. I feel like Elspeth Conquers Death should see way more play in Commander, and if you're playing this, that's an easy way to add a removal spell tutor target to your deck. So. A nice little combo. I think I would consider that a combo.
That's
I know it
like
doesn't
one of my
win the
favorite
game,
sagas, and like Showdown of the Scalds is another one. If you're in Boros,
yeah, combo.
Yeah, combo. That's for another time. What
a powerful combo.
Oof. Combos with planes, honestly. All right, Richard, we're gonna move on to you. Third card, underrated. What do you think?
All right, this one I stole from Tom, MTG Radio. It was his favorite card, and since he's been gone from Commander Clash, I feel we've forgotten about its existence. It's Skullwinder.
I love Skullwinder.
3 mana, 1/3. It has Death Touch. It's a snake. When it enters a battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, then choose an opponent. That player returns a card from his or her graveyard to their hand. 2% of decks, it's like 50 cents. You should probably play this over Eternal Witness almost always, right? Like, how many times do we need a Wrath or something that you don't have in your deck, but someone else has in the graveyard already, right? You can.
That's expression.
Did you say that my take was hot, but then you just go and drop that fire right there?
It's the same as Ewit, except you can utilize other people to help you fix the game. And if you really have nothing, you choose the person who has like the worst stuff, and now they're your friend, right? But you get to Ewit with a lot of upside. I think these symmetrical effects, which are seen as bad, are actually very strong in Commander, right? Like Tomer, you get the Wrath, and while Tomer's busy wrathing, I'm gonna get like my game-winning threat that no one is looking because they're all focused on the Wrath, right? So I think Skullwinder should be played.
I'm here for this hot take.
I will give you that it's underrated. 2%. It's better than that. I love my Eternal Witnesses, but better than it. You should play over Eternal Witnesses.
Think
of it as drawing 2 cards and ramping yourself, because Tomer gets the Wrath, he casts it. You don't have to do any of that, and you get your own card while you're doing it, right?
Eternal Witness is at 30%, by the way, on EDH Rec. 30% versus 2. Yeah, I agree that this is definitely underrated.
This is underrated. Better? No. I mean, maybe better in combat with E-Witness, but like
it's also a really good blocker. Touch. It's a 1/3 death touch.
It's death touch, and it's a snake.
But I feel like,
but not better than
we're focusing. We're focusing too much on the upside. Like giving your opponent a card in their hand is like in absolute terms, it's a drawback. Like. That makes it worse. Like I know like there's situations where it can be better, but a lot of times like that's not really going to be better. Maybe it's better agrees?
There's always someone who's weakest at the table where their extra card doesn't matter, right? And you can strike a deal, right? Like Seth, you have a game-winning combo in your graveyard, but if I target you with this, will you take something less threatening? right? And you'll probably be yes, because why not, right? So
What
what if I
agrees and then
betray
you? Have
you?
a Skullwinder in your hand, and you're like, oh, whoops.
Okay,
daisy.
so I mean, sometimes the card sucks, right? But what about the time where I need a Wrath, and the only one with the Wrath is Crim?
Yeah.
And Crim's coming up next, and we need a Skullwinder, a Wrath into Crim's hand, right? Ewit does nothing there. I get my card, and we all die, right? So there are upsides, right? There are downsides. Sometimes everyone is one card away from winning, and you have to give someone the one card, but don't cast Skullwinder. I don't know, right?
I like it more.
I just take issue with the better than Eternal Witness.
Yeah,
That seems
yeah.
silly to me.
How about on the same
agree.
level?
It should
On
be,
the same
it should see
level.
more play, but
Wait, which one can you skull clamp immediately? Skullwinder.
that's
answer.
Ewit too.
Actually,
Answer.
no, Skullwinder, because Skullwinder is the one that lives.
You don't want
For
that.
the combat part, right? The +1?
Yeah, plus one.
Look,
God,
which one holds a
Good
Dousing
damage.
Dagger better? Who's gonna block a 3/3 Death Touch? A 3/4 Death Touch, sorry.
That's 2% is insane. I don't know why it's that low, because Eternal Witness, as Tomer said, is 30%. So this should be significant. Out of all the cards we talked about, this would be the card that probably should have the highest percentage jump, I would say. But I don't think it should be above Eternal Witness and
It
playability.
seems-
So
More
rank the
reprint.
Ewit effects. We have Ewit, we have the Eternalized one, we have the 6-drop one, we have Skullwinder.
This would be ahead of the Skullwinder, ahead of the 6-drop one. Not sure about the Eternalized one. What does Belaged Recovery count? Belaged Recovery, that's a card that
That's
might
a land, though,
should see
you know?
more play than Ewit.
Yeah, what about,
but-
what about like straight up regrowth then at that point, right?
Yeah, what about Regrowth?
Yeah. If we're just sticking with literal witnesses, Eternal Witness, then this and Timeless Witness roughly
I
equal
say
a little bit
Timeless
behind, and
is
then
way
the
better.
6-mana one.
What about the
Way
Chord
better
of
than
Calling
Skullwinder.
into a Death Touch blocker and then get 2 cards as well?
But then they get their removal spell back from the graveyard.
Well, you don't
and kill the
target that
Skullwinder, and-
Also, can't you target somebody who doesn't have a graveyard?
Yeah.
So you could just
You
like
can.
wipe their graveyard.
If we were
and
responsible
be like,
and played Graveyard Hate,
yeah.
you could
That's-
Scavenging Ooze the card they take, right? There are many
Yeah.
ways.
Graveyard Hate and Skullwinder.
The card is good. There, like I do think it is good. It's just
Yeah.
not better than Eternal Witness. That's.
I
I'm
also
with
think
Seth
it's
on-
underrated. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. It is my personal favorite because I am a sucker for politics, and I agree with Richard that you can use it. You can usually leverage it to your advantage. Yeah. That's good. All right, Seth. What do you got for us after the Hedron debacle?
All right, we're gonna
what
go
hot
with
take do you have
something.
next?
There's a
We're
little
gonna
bias
go-
in our host here.
We're gonna go with something that can actually
arbiter.
blow up Hedron archives, which is Rampage of the Clans. Rampage of the Clans is a card. It shows up in 1% of decks. It is essentially free, another bulk rare, and it's a 4-mana green instant that blows up all artifacts and enchantments, and each person gets a 3/3 Centaur token for everyone that's blown up. So this is a card, 1% is really low, but blowing up all the artifacts and enchantments, that's nice. Of course, you are giving your opponent a bunch of tokens, but that can be an upside in a lot of decks. I have found Rampage of the Clans to be a good surprise finisher. If you can put some artifacts and enchantments on the battlefield yourself, being an instant is huge. You can wait right until the end step before your turn, blow everything up, make a whole bunch of tokens, and then just potentially one-shot someone and kill them. So I don't think this is a card that every deck should play, but 1% feels pretty low for me compared to its power level.
Yeah.
I love this card. It's really sweet. I mean, like if you use it against like somebody's artifact deck or enchantment deck, you completely cripple them, which is great. They do have a bunch of tokens, but I mean, there's so many ways to deal with those tokens.
Yeah, those are easy to deal with, and you can use it offensive. Like that's the game that bugged out a few weeks ago, where I was making all the icy mana lists. Like eventually, those are going to turn into hundreds of 3/3s if Moto hadn't crashed. So
It's a legit win con, and I had it in my clue deck too, as also a win con. So like any like artifact / enchantment token deck, it's like super good. And then if you have like ways of doubling tokens and whatnot, like Second Harvest, like you did in your deck, it's super good. And you can just use it. You can just use it like as removal, and it's also still super good.
Even the decks where it's good, like Lannis. See, you were talking about the Clue deck. According to EDH Rec, it's only in like 20% of Lannis decks, and to me, that feels like one of the best cards in the deck. So I'm not saying you just slam this in every single deck and get value out of it. That would be a little bit risky. But even the decks where it is perfect, people just seem to not think of this card because it's so good in the right deck.
I think 1% is about right. I agree with you. Like, if you're making a ton of artifacts, this is great.
We will never agree.
How many of those decks are there, right? Like, not
so
many,
close.
right? Would you throw this in a generic green deck? It will get you so murdered, right? like if someone has so many artifacts, you feel you need to remove them, you will die to like a million centaurs, unless you follow it up with a sweeper or a propaganda, right? In which case, you're now using 2 cards. So I think, like, if you are comboing with the piece, then yeah, right? It should 100% be played in more token generating artifact decks. But for a generic deck, like, nah, just play what's the thing? The creature that like pumps itself.
But Richard, remember we were talking about Dousing Dagger being dead in the late game. Now you can make it into a 3/3. It improves your Dousing Dagger.
It's a clock.
I would rather hold on to it and hope to get that Dousing Dagger land like 8 turns later than to turn it into a centaur.
Fair enough. All right, fine. Moving on. Maybe we can agree on this one. Krim, show us what you got.
All right. I'm gonna stay in the realm of non-green cards, and I'm gonna.
Is it Grixis?
It is in Grixis colors. But it's not actually Grixis, but you can play it in Grixis. It's 1 mana and it's Soothsaying. It's essentially another Sensei's Divining Top for me. The card itself is 1 blue, and it's an
You gotta be trolling.
What? Okay, it's obviously not nearly it, but the thing here is, okay, it still does what I want it to do, which is manipulate my draws, right? So it's 1 mana, you can pay 5 to shuffle your deck. You can pay X, look at the top X cards of your library, and put them back in any order. So this card, I love this card. This manipulates all my draw steps. I can then be like, okay, well, I'll crack a fetch land if I don't like my top 5 or something like that. Or I don't even have to crack a fetch land because I can shuffle my own deck later. And combined with, Counterbalance, it is a replacement top. And so I think it's sweet. It's an enchantment that I can immediately start doing stuff with on the next turn right after. I can go turn 1, then turn 2, I can scry 2, and then it just keeps, whenever I have loose mana, I can just do whatever I want.
I'm just gonna say, you said my trading post was too expensive. 5 mana to shuffle your library.
Is looking mighty hot right now.
This is great.
You have to pay at least 1 to look at the top of your library. Then when you decide you don't want it, then you pay another 5 to shuffle it.
Like, don't you just play like Scroll Rack or something if you're really desperate for such a thing?
But this is like $1.50.
What about like
Is Scroll Rack
Lantern
expensive?
Insight?
Scroll Rack is definitely expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive. I mean, it does seem good in Crim decks. If you're
Where
playing
is he gonna have the
Counterbalance,
extra 10 mana to look at the top 5 and shuffle, right? Like,
If you don't- How many turns do people pass?
so expensive.
High Tide, Snapcaster, High Tide, Soothsaying. Got him.
No. Think about this. This sits on the board, and oftentimes people will try to play around your counter spells and just don't do anything, or not do anything effective to where it's like it forces me to use my hand, right? So if that's the case, like, think of the times where we never force Richard to use any of his counter spells, right? Because we're too busy punching each other. So in those moments, Richard could just be scrying freely, doing whatever he wants, because it's an X cost.
There's got to be a better mana sink for when you pass the turn. Like, you can defile your Drown Yard someone, get them to die eventually.
For 1 mana?
I don't know. Drown Yard's a good counter to this.
I don't know, man. This is so slow.
I remember
My decks are all
this.
slow, so this works perfect.
It's okay in decks that care about the top card of your library, like Yuriko and Melik. I remember I ran in Melik, like one of the first budget commanders I wrote for the site like 5-6 years ago. I had Soothsaying in it, but like, it's a lot of mana. It's a lot of mana. I don't know, man.
I mean, I love this because I'm telling you, the scrying, I think, is getting just like overlooked here, and then being able to do that whenever you want, and however much loose mana you have.
It's not even scrying though, right? Like they go back on top. You need to actually shuffle.
Right. You need to actually shuffle, but being able to like put them back in any order still like pretty solid. Because then let's say I now have my fetch land, I'm just gonna keep the card I do want and then crack the fetch shuffle. Anyways,
I think I just flash green and play Sylvan Library.
I mean, I hate green, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Just add a full color for Sylvan Library.
Grixis doesn't have Sylvan Library, okay, Richard? Okay.
I would maybe play it if I really cared about manipulating the top of my deck. And then I'm still not sure that I would.
Think about it from the lens of somebody that plays land go.
But you want to like pass the turn and draw cards or something, not just like manipulate the top, right? There's got to be like, would you play Seth's Mana Rock, pay 5, make a clue, next turn crack it? Like, wouldn't that be better?
But the thing is, then, see, like that's already a 5-mana investment on the front side, right? So this is just 1 mana, whatever. I can do this and still hold up counter magic.
Yeah, he can like counterspell and then use the remaining 1 mana to soothsay.
To look at the top card and then know what it is and then still draw it. But the thing here is that does matter when I can like crack my fetch lands and stuff like that too.
I will say
there's gotta be something better.
I played a lot of Crim decks on the back end of the season, and I started to sympathize with his point of view where he'd say things like mana drain is not powerful enough. And then I'm like, kind of, yeah, actually. Like, we need Hull Breachers. And I started getting to the Crim mindset. I still can't buy the Soothsaying.
You'll understand.
I need to play more Grixis to understand Soothsaying.
Full Crim mode.
Yeah, you'll understand.
I was like, Mana Leak needs to draw me 2 cards. It's not good enough. But I'm like,
well, yeah, exactly.
Wow. This is disgusting. All right, so all right, this is definitely a tough crowd. So I need to pick my battles really hard here. I was gonna go pretty janky with one of them, but all right, okay, all right. This one will make everybody pretty happy.
This gotta be a good one to close it out. We can't end on a bad note.
All right, so I was gonna go with Necrologia, but now I'm not even that sure about that one. All right, we're gonna go with a 5%er that I think deserves to go even higher. This is how high I'm gonna have to go for this one. The crowd pleaser. This one, friends, is Kenrith's Transformation. This is a 2-mana, 1 and a green enchantment aura, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so it already replaces itself. And enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. So you take any scary creature on the battlefield and you turn it into a 3/3 elk. It loses all its abilities. 2 mana in green. Green already has difficulties dealing with creatures, so this is like kind of outside of its comfort zone, and it deals with it. I mean, in theory, it has difficulties with it. And I find it's incredibly good, especially against opposing commanders, because usually if you have a removal spell for a commander, it goes to the command zone, they recast it, and you have to deal with it again. This one is an extra step. It turns the commander into a 3/3 elk, and then if the opponent's owner, the commander's owner, wants to get back the commander, they either have to get rid of the aura, or they have to kill the commander and then recast it. So it's an extra step to get back access to the commander. At the very least, 2 mana, draw a card, and you deal with a commander temporarily or whatever. 5% on EDHRX. It's up there. It's definitely up there, but I think it should be played even more. 70 cents. What do you all think?
I am going to agree with this one. It says draw a card. It's good at dealing with commanders. I really, the draw a card thing though, like that sets the floor on it. Like, worst case, if there's not a great target, you can always cycle it for 2 mana, which is nice. Like, that's like the absolute worst thing the card can do is 2 mana turn into a new card, which means it's never going to be dead like some of these other cards we've been talking about, where it's like, oh, in the right situation, they're really good, but in the wrong situation, they're really bad. This one's always going to be fine, and sometimes it's really good when you're getting someone's commander, so I'm going to agree. I think this should be one of the most played green removal spells behind, like, along with things like Beast Within and maybe Song of the Dryad or something. So I'm in.
I always tell you to play more removal, and if green does that already because it can kill anything and draw cards, counter spells. But sure, I do think that this should be in almost every, like, legitimately every green deck. So why not? This is really
Yes,
good.
Crim.
I think this card is
two.
amazing. This card is amazing.
Let's go.
Because
Let's go.
you always have access to your commander, right?
Richard.
So like this means you have to, like Tomer
Richard.
mentioned, you have to, an extra step. There's an extra step you have to go through, and it's already replaced itself. So it's good.
It's also kind of like a mini Oko, and you love Oko.
I don't want to sound difficult, and I
on,
promise
Richard.
audience I'm not being difficult, but it's
on,
sorcery
Richard,
speed.
please.
There's only so much spot removal you can play, and you don't want to just randomly fire it off at sorcery speed. You want to fire it off when you're about to die. So like Beast Within, instant speed removal is what you want, not sorcery speed. So this is okay if you have like enchantment synergies, right? You're playing Enchantress or things like that where like the card type matters, but I'm playing Beast Within, I'm playing Generous Gift, all of those before Kenrith's transformation, right? And I only have so many slots for spot removal.
You should have more.
This doesn't make the cut. Like, it has to be a scary creature that's unprotected, that makes it to your turn such that you can slap this down on it, right? Like, what happens usually? They play a creature to put the boots on it, right? And then that's it, right? So you
Richard
need
plays
the
too much
instant
CDH.
speed. You need the instant speed to deal with it, right? Or you play Scary Commander, it's fine until you combo off, then I'll remove it. But if you're not going to combo off, then I'm just going to hold my removal, right? Like, I don't need to use it. So
But you can draw a card into more removal.
you're drawing cards into your basic land, and then now you need the removal, and you're like, I got nothing. So it's okay, but I'd rather have instant speed removal. I think being sorcery speed is a big deal.
So you think it's not underrated?
I think 5% is about right.
We were so close.
You still win, right? It's still
We were
like
so close.
3 to 1. It's still a victory.
Wait, hold
Just
on.
not unanimous.
Does that mean which one have we all agreed on that is like was it Spreading Plague?
I think it was
Spreading
Hedron
Plague,
Archive, from what I
unfortunately, but we
remember.
don't talk about that.
I legitimately think it was Spreading
Skullwinder.
Plague.
I think we agreed on Skullwinder.
Yeah.
And almost agreed on Rampage of the Clan. Did we fail? Did this podcast fail?
No, I picked up some good
Cheese.
cards. I think I'm gonna pick up some cards from Krim here. Seth, I don't
Okay.
know. He really likes dirtling and drawing cards.
Okay, one quick one that I didn't get to mention was Wrong Turn, by the way. That's another good one.
I love Wrong Turn.
That's instant speed like Richard wants. And
Okay.
it's
Explain
hilarious.
What does
It
it
doesn't do
Crim?
anything, though.
What does it do? This is our bonus round.
Okay, quick
This
bonus
is gonna
round.
be Ed.
It's 2 and 0 blue, and it's instant. Target opponent gains control of target creature. The amount of people I get with this guy, this is such a gotcha card, and it's hilarious because oftentimes, like, think about it, I can give your commander away to somebody else, and that's not what their deck's built around. So I don't care, like, right? Like, imagine if you're playing your I don't know, your Voltron deck, and it's like, welp. There goes my commander, I guess, and then with things attached to it. Or the amount of times where I am able to be like, hey, to politic my way into like something, hey, I'll give you, Richard, this Primeval Titan if you do this, whatever. So I think it's hilariously fun. It's got the politic aspect to it. It's still removal-ish. And it's just awful when it's a 1v1 part. Like once it's down to 2 players... Okay, now it's bad. Now it's bad. Otherwise,
You give him the draw new.
That's so close.
It's such a fun card. It's such a good gotcha card, and I think
It's
that's
a fun card.
Yeah,
It is fun.
and it's instant speed.
It-
It's instant.
I agree with Krim. I think it's actually pretty good for the blue removal.
Yeah, it's blue.
Oh,
and
I think
it's
this card is absolutely
Oh no, I thought we had it in the bonus
it's
round.
so bad.
Come on.
Oh, it's a horrible. It's not a good card.
I wouldn't
It is
run it
properly
over
rated
Punk.
as a horrible card, but it is a fun troll card, and it is fun. Like, but we're not doing like best troll cards.
But it's also
we're
good.
doing
Underrated.
underrated cards.
But it's under.
You can give like blockers. People can like double kill in combat.
yeah. That's
I
actually
think, I
good.
think you still run Pongify, Rapid Hybridization, and Reality Shift over this. Because, like, yes, it screws
Reality
over
Shift, yes.
Commanders.
I agree
Yeah.
with Reality Shift.
You don't like Pongify and Rapid?
to be honest with you, okay.
Tongue-of-Eye rapid hybridization. Raven's Crime
Raven's Crime is
Form.
fine.
Yeah.
Raven's Crime is fine. I like that. But this
3 mana.
yeah. But 3 mana oftentimes
sometimes-
destroy is not good. Think about how many like
really
But,
good against
but giving
commanders.
the creature to someone else is
Yeah,
is not even
what if
leaving the
it's just like a
battlefield
scary
at all.
creature in general, and then
Well-
you just give it to somebody else, and they just kill you with
They
it.
No, because
smack
the
you with it.
But the
Yeah.
thing here is, like, example, if I give the indestructible threat to somebody else who can't pump it up anymore or do anything more shenanigans with it, that's great. Like, I would rather deal with
It's
So
like
you
it-
could have just exiled it.
well, okay, but I agree. Like, reality shift is better. Ravencraft is better. Whatever the metallic sculpting that gives you a 4/4 is better. But then this, and I play a lot of spot removal, so maybe that's also another reason why I love having so much of it. But yeah, like I think this card is perfect for the politicking part of it, and most importantly, that is a level of play that you have to factor into, and that does add to the power of it. So.
It's only 1%. So I actually agree with
Yes.
him. I think the card is actually really good. I think I agree with Seth and Tomer. Maybe you still play Pongify or something, right? This would not replace that, but it should be played way more, I think. And it's also a very fun card, right? Like, I think that's a very important thing. So I actually agree with Krim. I think it should be played a lot more.
This is a solid 4th target removal in blue, I think.
I only play 2,
More
Tomer.
than 1%. I agree that it is underrated.
Yeah,
Seth.
You're not gonna sell me. You're not gonna sell me. No, we're not going out with agreement.
So close.
It's
This
fun,
podcast has
it's
taken a
fun,
wrong
it's
turn.
trolling.
This podcast has concluded.
No.
What's the card? Necrologia? No, wait. No.
I didn't
What's
even
Krim's
use
card? Oh, Spreading
Necrologia.
Plague. Spreading Plague was
spreading
the one.
plague. Hey!
That's it.
I was
We've killed
going to
EDH
use
as we've known it.
Necrologia
Everyone
as,
play
like,
Spreading
this
Plague next
slam
week.
dunk.
Play it. Buy it. It's good. It's good
Oh,
for
man.
you. It's good for you.
All right. Well, so we've learned today that we will not agree on anything.
Except spreading plague.
Except don't play Spreading Plague.
No.
I know we agree on that.
No. We're not talking about whether it's in good form. We're talking about how cool of a card it is.
It's definitely underrated.
Yes.
For good reason. All right.
Underrated.
So that concludes our podcast. We were aiming for the 4-hour mark on talking stuff. We went a little bit above, hoping to agree unanimously, and we are not. So yeah, hopefully that's something to chew on. A bunch of underrated cards, the pros, the cons, and all of them. And maybe you disagree, maybe you agree. Let us know in the comments section on the YouTube channel, and if you're listening to Spotify, thank you very much. And I'm so sorry. Maybe we should have a comment section in the Spotify as well. That would be cool. Yes, that is it for our show, everybody. And also, if you are interested in more underrated cards that are on a budget, I have an underrated Twitter thread. Just find me at Twitter at Budget Commander. You'll find that the Twitter thread I pretty much update it pretty often. It's a long chain, as most of these cards and many, many more that may or may not be considered underrated by the rest of the group, but I think it is. And that is it for the show, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. And until next time, friends, see ya. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking the like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, make sure to click the subscribe button. And if you want to watch similar videos, click on the links appearing on screen right now.